Greetings, my sisters and brothers. So glad that you are here to be a part of this Bible study lesson for today. It has been great up to this point. Beginning the new year, January 2021, we have started the year with lots of instructions on getting along and on loving each other. And, you know, God requires that of us. And because He requires it, we have to do it. Do we have to be reminded sometimes? Yes. So why don't you take today's lesson as an additional reminder of what we are supposed to do. So we're going to begin with our emphasis. And our emphasis is sharing love and establishing unity in the kingdom. And our thought, kingdom citizens must know that we should exemplify God, exemplify His love, and work across social barriers to build bridges of unity and hope. And so when I think about social barriers, we need to think about our cultural barriers, perhaps some traditional cultural customs that we have that could be barriers. And there are lots of other barriers as well, economic barriers, political barriers, and they go on. And they all have some type of place in our lives, whether we acknowledge it, whether we have to correct it, they are there. Mm-hmm. All right, so the words that we need to focus on today are love, harmony, compassion, and unity. Now, I know that you know the meanings of these words, but I just want to emphasize them today just as a bit of foundation for the lesson. So the meaning of love is to show some strong affection for another, arising out of kinship or personal ties. So that means that in order for me to love, have a love for someone, I really have to get to know them. I know that we say we love everybody, but to have that kinship means that I have to get to know you a little bit. To have that personal tie, I have to get to know you. Maybe we have some things in common. Maybe we grow together in relationship, whether sister, brother, in the church house. Either way, it means that we have to get to know each other. The word harmony, it means the interweaving of different accounts into a single narrative. And this made me think of a song, or think of music, so to speak, where we're combining music or combining notes simultaneously. That's harmony. Compassion. It means to have the capacity for sharing the painful feelings of another. You know, to be sympathetic, to be concerned for the sufferings or the misfortunes of others. Just to have a caring heart. You know, when somebody is sick, or when somebody has a broken heart, you know, just kind of have some type of feeling for them, some concern, some compassion, because you never know. That circle may go around, and it could be you, and you would want someone to have compassion for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And then unity. It means joined as a whole. You know, we're going to become one. Here at Jehovah Missionary Baptist Church, we have Unity Day, where we all come together. On your jobs, I hope that you would have some type of unity. Because in this lesson, we're going to find out that when Paul talks to us, he's telling us how we're supposed to act in the church house and outside of the church house. All right, so those are our vocabulary words for today.
All right.
So lesson four is living in harmony with each other. Now, my grandmother had a saying, come live with me, come visit me is not like come live with me. Now, that's from the mouth of Annie Newton. I will never, ever forget that. And if that statement isn't true, I don't know. So come visit me. It's not like come live with me. And so, we live in homes, yes, together. But those of us that are workers in the vineyard of Christ, or in the kingdom, we live together. Let's say we live together in this church. You live together in your church where you worship, when we're working together for the upbuilding of God's kingdom. All right? So living in harmony with each other. So I have a few questions that you need to consider. All right? A few questions to consider. Have you ever found yourself in conflict with a fellow church member? Have you ever found yourself in conflict with a fellow church member? Now, some of you may say no, because perhaps you're not really working that much in the vineyard, in the kingdom. Okay, so you come, you go. You don't make anybody upset. Nobody makes you upset. See you next Sunday.
Yeah.
All right, but on the other hand, for those that may be working in the vineyard, working in the kingdom, have you found yourself in conflict with church members? Now, personally, I probably can count it on my one hand, but I will say this. As the PK, as the preacher's kid of this house, I've always told my pastor, my father, that I choose to help you in ministry, not hurt you in ministry. So with that said, I do my best to not cause any conflict in the church house or with church members. Now, would I know if people are upset with me? Not unless they tell me. All right, so think about that question. And if anybody that is really working in the vineyard, in the kingdom, if they can say that they've never had any conflict, I like to meet that person. I really do.
Yes, sir.
Because they have something that all of us can use. All right? And so the next question, when conflict arises, are you willing to take the initiative to resolve it? So this makes me think of, you have an issue, there's an issue, and instead of you resolving it, you take that concern, that issue outside, and you talk to somebody else about it. But it really has to deal with what's going on inside here, as far as you having an issue with someone. So do you choose to resolve it and say, okay, Pastor Brock, we need to talk because I'm feeling some kind of way. All right? And you know what? Perhaps most of the time, I don't have a percentage on it, haven't done a research, but perhaps I trust to say that most of the time, that person had no idea that you were upset about something. And so it could be something that we can really resolve immediately. But if we don't resolve it immediately, then I would continue to have these issues, or you, every time I see that person. That person has no clue.
That's right.
Every time I see it, I don't want to see him. I don't want to see Pastor Brock come by me because he made me upset, and he doesn't have a clue why. All right? So let me clear this up. He hasn't made me upset. Okay? I was just using that as an example because he's sitting right here. Okay? So let's get that straight before we take that out in the community. All right? But that's real.
Yeah,
that's real. And it's like even in your home, you have issues with your spouse or with your children, and you just don't talk about it. You pass each other. You don't talk for days. Some can go for weeks. So really, we really have to grow to the point that we can really just talk about it, because everything can't be smoothed over.
That's right.
All right, so let's go on to question number 3. Do you feel a genuine family relationship with your fellow church members? All right, so I don't know who comes up with these questions, but they always seem to be thought-provoking questions. Okay, they make me think. So do you feel a genuine family relationship with your fellow church members? All right. Well, in order to have that kind of feeling, I feel that you have to, again, you have to know somebody. You have to grow together. And I can honestly say, over the last few years, I have developed, I feel, a family relationship with the sisters and the sisters that come to sisterhood ministry meeting, or empowerment session is what we call it. I believe if it wasn't for that ministry, I wouldn't know people. I probably still don't know a lot of people here in Jehovah, but for the sisters that show up, that when we were coming face to face, or now that show up on Zoom, I just feel that I have a relationship with them. I have some of their phone numbers now that I never had before. I text them and say, how you doing, or thinking of you. And I just honestly feel that if I ever need anything, that I could call them or text them and say, hey, I need you, even if it's just for a prayer.
Yes.
All right, so thank God for the empowerment sessions that we have with Sisterhood, because through our retreats, I have developed a relationship with them, and I feel that, I know that it's genuine, that what I have towards them. All right? Okay, so let's get to the lesson. Our lesson today comes from Romans 12:15 through 18. And here, Romans 12 really begins by asking the question, since he owed us nothing and has given us great mercy, how should we respond? All right, that's the question. Since he owed us nothing and has given us great mercy, how should we respond? And so our response should be, we should have a life of self-sacrificing worship. Okay, in other words, we need to think about what God has done for us.
That's right.
Okay, and we need to worship him. We need to spend time in serving the Lord. Not only that, spend time serving the Lord, serving believers, and and serving others, serving enemies, and refusing to take revenge, and we need to overcome evil. All right, so that's part of some of the foundation of Romans 12. All right, so the heart of the lesson today, kingdom citizens know that the fourth step, this is the fourth step, in tearing down social divisions and building bridges to receive God's love and apply it to our brothers and sisters. So that's the heart of the lesson. And so I picked out two words here, receive, because we like receiving now. Okay, a month ago we had Christmas, people got gifts. Despite the pandemic, people still got gifts. Amen. And we're still receiving. My grandson came in the house that Christmas Day, and he said, "Ooh, I open presents underneath the tree." And I'm like, who said that's a present for you? But we like to receive. Even a baby likes to receive. And then the other word there is apply. So I'm good with receiving. I'm good with that word. Apply. So we have to receive God's love, and we have to apply it to our brothers and sisters. All right, so that word apply is a verb. All right, so just as God has shown us, we too have to show others. So the introduction of the lesson here, and just in case you're not a member of Jehovah Missionary Baptist Church, I will tell you that you can find these lessons on our website, and you can follow along. All right, so in the introduction, it says, as kingdom citizens, we should endeavor to live in peace with one another and conduct our lives aiming for what is noble, honest, and proper. You know, the old people say you need to do right.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and with this said, we can't control other people's behaviors.
That's right.
So let's understand that. I can only control me, and that can be a challenge sometimes. Okay? So just know that we're not responsible for other people's behaviors. But we must strive to live in peace with each other as much as we can. And I like how this is printed here, because this is the reality of it. The reality is that this statement says we must strive to live in peace with each other as much as we can, which means that we're going to have some struggles, but as much as we can, let's try to do right. And so unity and disunity, those two words, they can't be in one place together. Okay? They can't have a peaceful coexistence. That's right. All right? Not even in your home, not even in the community, not on your job, not in the church, they just don't exist together. So our lesson today is from Paul's letter to the church in Rome. And I like Paul because Paul gives us real conversation, like he gives us these hard conversations, and then he turns around and tells us what to do. You know, he gives us some life applications. All right, so in chapter 12, Paul provides a list of bullet commands to help ensure harmonious relationships. And so when I was reading through this, as I mentioned earlier, you know, these Bible studies lessons in January, to me, they're like reminders. Okay, you know, you already know. The kids said you already know. You already know, but you got to be reminded. So he gives us some tips here. And so the unifying theme of the list is setting ourselves aside to effectively love and serve the Lord. Each other, and I mentioned that earlier, and this is the key now, and even your enemies. Now that's hard. All right? There's a saying that says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
That's right.
All right. So our goal as Christians is to love and lift up each other. And this is one of our important steps in the unity process. So in that unity process means that we're coming together, that we are learning each other, we're becoming one. Okay? So let's move on to our first point. Our first point here, it says, kingdom citizens know that to preserve unity in the kingdom, our actions must be motivated by genuine love.
That's right.
Wow. So, in other words, we can't be fake. Either you love me or you don't. Right. And so Paul begins by saying our love for God and each other must not be fake. Even Paul said that, you know, and people will say now too, you know, she's fake, he's fake. And you can tell that. You can tell that feeling on the inside when somebody approaches you, you know they're fake. You know, that's kind of like, it makes me think of when people walk up to you and you may know that they're struggling and you may not know that they're struggling, but they simply come out of their mouth and they say, will you pray for me? Well, I've learned that I'm not going to wait, because once I walk away from you, I may forget. So I'll just say, can we pray right now? Okay, so you want to be genuine in what you do. Don't let it be a performance. That's right. We're not here for Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. We're not here for that. Okay, we really don't have time for that. There's a place for that, but it's not here. All right? And so Paul writes that everything that we do, it must be fostered by genuine love. And we must strive to establish that special bond that binds us together as brothers and sisters. And we can't do that if we don't try to connect somehow or another. All right? We have to get to know each other. And then it could be a time, it's just the fact that I may not even know you, but some of the issues that we've dealt with in 2021, you know, those various pandemics that we had and the racial injustice, you know, we didn't know a lot of those people, but we had a connection with them. Yeah. You know, like people's sons that were being killed, I connected with that because it could have been my son, you know, or it could have been my uncle. All right, so it's just have some genuine love for brothers and sisters. All right, and to that end, he says that we should rejoice with those who rejoice. Be happy for folks. Be happy when they get a promotion. Be happy that they're healed from COVID. Yeah. Be happy that their child is doing well.
Yes.
Rejoice, because there's going to come a time when you're going to want somebody to rejoice with you.
That's right.
All right, and then mourn with those who mourn. And we've had a lot of that in the past year. Wow. Some of that stuff really hit home with COVID-19.
Yes, Lord.
I had an aunt, and my mom reminded me over the holiday break that over the holy season, I should say, that when our cousin died from Boston, Massachusetts, she died from COVID, but she contracted when she went to the hospital for something else. She says, "Maria, don't you remember? That's your godmother?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And she named me. She was the person that named me. And so we couldn't be there with our relatives, but I mourned with them. My cousins and all those people, all of our relatives in Boston. All right, so just mourn with those who mourn.
Yeah.
All right, again, that circle comes around.
Yes, it does.
And so it's going to be our turn. It's not going to be if, it's going to be when.
Yeah.
Okay, so just remember that. I even trust to say, I might need to pull some of these out and just put it on a sticky note and put it on my mirror. Because Paul has some good reminders here for us. And so in times of happiness, in times of sadness, in times of ups and downs, we should be able to be a support system for our sisters and brothers.
Yeah.
All right? Because time is growing really close, as we can see. And that's how we express true love. And another way that you can, it's also another way that you can live out your spiritual gifts. So I did a spiritual inventory, spiritual gift inventory a couple of weeks ago. And just in case you don't know what your gifts are, then just Google spiritual gifts and you can take the assessment. And it will tell you. And so some of the gifts that you can express could be the gift of administration, gift of service, teaching, exhortation, hospitality, prophecy, faith, giving, leadership, evangelism, discernment, knowledge, missionary, apostle, wisdom, pastor, shepherding, and mercy. All right? And so I don't mind telling you, mine came up administration, service / helps, and teaching. All right? So if you don't know what your gifts are, that's where you can start. And then you can begin to help people through identifying your gifts. All right? So, again, within this, Paul tells us that we have to learn to hate what's not right. We have to learn to hate what is evil and hold on tight to what is good. All right? But I trust to say sometimes we do the opposite. We'll hold on to what's evil. If somebody hurt us, we'll hold on to that. But what's good, we simply forget. Okay? So this is accomplished in our lives by changing our mind. So nothing really happens unless you change your mind.
Yeah.
It's a mindset thing.
That's good.
And you really have to want to. Not only do you need to change your mind, but that heart, you have to do something with that too.
Yeah.
It's going to have to soften up. We can't be bullheaded. If we want change, then we have to make the change, and the change has to start with us. And we are the man in the mirror. All right? Okay, so we got to renew our minds. And it also says here, the community of the church is strengthened when we strive to be on one accord or with one accord. And I noticed that. The more that I was working in ministry and we're coming together to support the vision, things just work better when we come together in the right minds.
That's right.
All right? So the terms brother and sister, that's when they become real in our relationships with each other. When we come together, we work together first of all for the upbuilding of God's kingdom, but then also for building our relationships with our sisters and brothers here on earth. All right? So let's move on to point number 2. Kingdom citizens know that we must strive to live in harmony with our brothers and sisters regardless of social status. Wow. So, What do you think of that? We've got to live together in harmony with each other, regardless of the social status. So here, Paul says that we should strive to live in harmony with one another.
That's right.
And then I like this because he gives us a warning. He says, do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited.
Right.
And this really made me think of, and I have to keep referencing 2020 with COVID-19 and all the experiences that we had with that, because some people that were in what we would consider high places ended up in some low positions.
Yes.
And so that perhaps changed a lot of mindsets, that perhaps if I was in a high place looking down at people, then all of a sudden 2020 brought me down here where these people are. So we got to be careful. I keep referencing that circle, and that circle can go around and around.
Yeah.
All right, so he's telling us not to be conceited. He emphasizes that people of low position, they simply mean that they're ordinary people. You know, people had to really face the fact that they had to stand in a food line to get boxes of food.
Yes.
Some people really had to face that fact. All right? So one of the reasons Christianity attracted so many followers in its early days was that the women, slaves, and people of low social standing were all welcome to come to faith in Christ.
Yes.
And so we've got to open our arms. We don't know, just because somebody looks homeless doesn't mean that they are homeless. And I'm reminded that when I lived in Washington, D.C., going to graduate school, and I had to walk, take the subway, and you see lots of people in the subway area. They call it Metro now. You see them on the street holding a can. And I will say I was very concerned about myself and not getting involved with that, or getting hurt, or taking my time to look in my purse for some money thinking somebody might knock me over the head or something like that. But the point of this story is that there was a man right there outside of one of our buildings. He would sit there to collect money. And then weeks later, I saw on the news where this man had some type of yacht or something in Florida. So I know it wasn't my place to judge, but just got to be careful. All right? Just got to be careful of how we are treating people, because for all I knew, you know, we never know if that's Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, we just don't know. And so, you know, young mind, I've grown since then, but, you know, just something to think about. All right? So the result was that people who would never associate anywhere else in Roman culture found themselves in relationships with each other in the church. And Paul commands those on the upper levels of society, meaning these people that feel like they have it all, to leave any class rivalry out of the church. So, you know, we come here in different statuses. Okay? But the bottom line is that we all should come together for the upbuilding of God's church and leave all that other stuff on the outside. So in other words, my status should not matter once I get in here. Okay? All right? So this is a lesson for us today. While we say, whosoever will, let him come, and come just as you are, we must also say that when you come, it is expected that you will leave the trapping of division, all of that stuff that does not matter, leave that out there. Okay, so if we're really honest with saying whosoever will, let them come, then we really have to think about that. Because when we were coming to church, sometimes we would have these strange people to come in, and we see, you know, everybody's looking and seeing, hey, that face hasn't been here before. You know, and they're coming in and they may be acting strange. But how do we know if that's one of those whosoever will persons? All right? He also teaches that we must not repay anyone evil for evil. So if somebody's done something wrong to me, hopefully we've grown to that point, we've matured in that point that we don't want to pay them back. So we can't do the playground kid thing anymore. All right, so you hit me, I'm going to get the last hit. Mm-hmm. I don't care what happened. I don't care if I get suspended. I don't care anything about that. You did me wrong, I'm going to do you wrong back. Mm-hmm. All right, so we can't do that anymore. We should be a little growner now. Mm-hmm. All right, and so our genuine love makes us peacemakers and not peace breakers.
That's right.
And we know that there are people in this world, they just don't want to make peace. Okay? They don't want to see good.
That's right.
All right? So here Jesus taught us that the peacemakers, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Mm-hmm. All right? So with that said, if you want to be called a child of God, then you also have to be a peacemaker.
That's right.
Wow, that's another one of those that needs to go on a sticky note on your mirror. All right? So this should be one of the characteristics of a true believer. All right? And one of the other things I want to say is when we talk about that, whosoever will, let him come, that when we have people that join the body of Christ and we give them the right hand of fellowship, they're just as equal as if I've been here 50, 60 years and they've only been here 24 hours.
That's right.
Okay? So be careful again with that whosoever will. We said we want them to come to Christ. We provided the right hand of fellowship. They've done everything that they need to do. Their day one is like my year 50.
That's right.
Okay? All right. And so the last point. Kingdom citizens know that to preserve unity in the kingdom, they must handle conflict with their brothers and sisters in a godly way.
That's right.
Now, some might say that's not a true fight. Wow, it even got quiet in here. There are only 4 people in here. Because in a godly way means that I have to talk it out, got to be nice and all of that, and otherwise, if we don't handle it that way, then that means that we want to fuss, cuss, tell you off. Some people physically fight, but that's not God's way.
That's right.
All right, so we just have to have conversation, and this just reminds me of when our son Sterling was growing up in middle school. Middle schoolers, they go through these things that they go through. And my husband was working out of town, so it was like I'm the one to handle things. And I had been fussing with Sterling about stuff. Whatever it was, I was fussing. It was true middle school stuff. And then one day I just said to him, and I can see it clear as day right now, we were standing in the sunroom. And by this time, this joker was taller than me in middle school. And I said, in a low voice, I'm going to tell God and I'm going to tell Jaleesa. That joker broke down to his knees. And I'm thinking, all that time I was fussing, loudly, saying whatever I needed to say. It was like he didn't hear that. But I said, I mentioned 2 people's names. I mentioned God and I mentioned his big sister. And that joker looked like he shrunk that little. Okay, so we got to be strategic in our fight, in our conflicts, and getting them resolved. Okay, and so Paul here, he continues by acknowledging that, that's why I like Paul. He's just so real. He said, there are going to be times you're going to have conflict. Y'all, we can't live in this world without conflict.
That's right.
We really can't. That's part of us growing together, getting to know each other, having relationships. Okay? So he says that there will be times of conflict, no matter how hard we strive to live in peace.
That's right.
It's just there. It's part of the world. And Paul is saying, hey, if you take these tidbits I'm giving you that you're dealing with in this world, you're going to be okay. But it's here. It's here to stay. And so he encourages us to be careful, to do what's right in the eyes of everyone. Okay? And that talks about character. What did it say? Having good character is doing the right thing even when no one is looking.
That's right.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so if it is possible, as far as it depends on you,
That's right.
live at peace with everyone. So we're going back to you, to me. It's my responsibility. This thing is hinging on me to make peace, to be a peacemaker, or to handle conflict correctly. All right, and so Paul reminds us, he says that we shouldn't repay evil for evil. That's done for us. I mentioned that earlier. And he says that this does not mean that we should, in other words, have people run over us.
That's right.
You know, I'm here to tell you now, you're not going to run over me. All right? But what I've learned with that, somebody not running over me, is that every time something happens, I don't have to have a response.
That's right.
I might need to be able to sit back and have some observations about it before I kind of jump off.
Yeah.
Okay? So it doesn't mean that he wants us to have people to run over us. It just simply means that we should live righteously according to God's principles in plain view of everyone. Because everybody's watching us. And we're, you know, sometimes we're the only Bible people see.
That's right.
And sometimes people read that Bible when you're standing in a long line at a grocery store. You know you're running late, and then you're rushing in there, and you're thinking you should get through right quick. And so you're very impatient. You're saying ugly things or whatever. That's the Bible somebody's reading. All right, so the more we understand God's grace toward us, the more likely we are able to extend grace to someone else.
That's right.
Okay, so remember, we talked earlier about receiving. Oh, it's easy to receive. But applying, but giving to someone else. All right, so Paul gives us two clear conditions here. He said, if possible.
If possible.
So he already acknowledges that, you know, it may not work out. Some people may not want to, you know, get through this conflict. And then he said, as far as it depends on you.
Yeah.
So it depends on me, as I mentioned earlier. And so this command recognizes that there's some conflict that's unavoidable.
Yeah.
You know, and I've come to realize that even as I mature as a Christian and mature in age, some things I'm just not it's not worth the fight. You know, it's not worth the argument. It's not worth any sleepless nights. Okay? So, and so some people are just not interested in making peace with others. We know who they are. They just, those people, they just always have something going. You even hate to see them coming. All right? So there's an appropriate time and place to solve any issues that we may have.
That's right.
All right? It's not in front of everybody in the meeting, whether that meeting is at church or whether that meeting is on your job. It's not there. It's not for you to get back to anyone right in public eye. Okay? It's a way to do things, and you need to try to exercise that. Call that person, say, hey, can we talk? Can I meet you somewhere? Or so forth. Okay? And so when we align our thoughts and philosophies to what the Bible says, then we will see where things will manifest in our lives. And I trust to say that depending on how we handle conflict, depending on how we treat people, all of that stuff, all of that good stuff, it plays out in our children.
Yeah.
So you might want to be careful. You know, that scripture that talks about, or the saying that talks about, you know, in other words, we got to be careful what we say, how we act, because of our children. We got to be prayerful. Children's children.
Yeah.
You know, that lineage. We got to be careful because our children are watching us, or people are watching us, and so we want to make sure that we are modeling what is Christ-like.
Right.
Now, is it a challenge? Yes, it is. All right? And so I want to leave with you, since Paul left you some tips, I want to leave a few tips with you. And this kind of made me think of how we work with each other. All right? Usually when I teach, I usually have a visual for you. So I thought I would find one for you for this lesson. And so now, don't forget what Paul has told us, how we're supposed to treat each other, how we're supposed to live in harmony with each other. And then as we do that, I want you to look at this personal styles chart I have here. All right? And so I've used this in leadership, and I've come to realize that there's certain things about certain people, certain characteristics that people have that some of us may say, oh, that person gets on my nerves. I don't want to be in a meeting with them or such. But you know what? You're going to find out in this personal styles I'm going to share with you that we all need each other. Mm-hmm. All right? So let's start with the north person. So what you would do here is each person, if you were in a group of people, they would determine whether they were a north, west, east, or south person. And they would determine that by these characteristics. So a north person is an acting person. They're that person that says, let's do it. They like to act. In other words, not act like in a performance, but they want to, you say, okay, let's have a Valentine's celebration or something like that, or worship experience. Okay, let's go, let's do it. What are we going to do? All right, they're ready to plunge in. The east person, they're the speculating people. For this celebration, this worship experience, they like to look at the big picture. The possibilities before even moving on anything. All right, and then we have the south person. They're caring in this setting. They want to make sure that everybody in the meeting is heard. Have you said your piece, Sister Smith? What are your views on it? And they're just concerned about it. They're just true Southerners. They like to know that everyone's feelings have been taken in consideration, that their voices have been heard before they move on to anything. Mm-hmm. Now and then we move on to the West people. So those were the South. And so the West people, they're paying attention to detail. So we talked about this worship experience that we said we're going to have for February, all right? So they want to know who's going to be there, what are we going to do, when are we going to have it, where are we going to have it, why? Before they take on any action. Okay? And so what you would do here, you would get in a group and you go to your specific areas, and then you would ask yourself these questions. What are the strengths of these styles? What are the strengths of the north person? What are the strengths of the east, the west, or the south? So the question is, what are the strengths of our style as a north person? Okay? Then you ask yourself another question. What are the limitations of our style? And you will list some limitations of your style. All right? And then the next question is, what style do we find most difficult to work with? And then why? All right? The last question, what do others need to know about us that will make our working together more successful? So you see with this last question, we're trying to come together. We're trying to unify, because guess what? I need some of these people's characteristics in order to pull off what needs to happen. All right? So here it is that, the strength of the north person is that they come up with ideas, they're ready to plunge forward. They have good leadership characteristics, give or take, and, they just, let's make it happen. But then some of the limitations of this north person is that perhaps they don't take in consideration all the things that the south person feels. Like we're not listening to the views of other people. All right? And then some people may find it difficult to work with north people. They may consider them bossy, too assertive, too heavy, too overbearing. All right? And then what is it that other people need to know about each of these characteristics? Well, for a north person, just, kind of know that we just like to do things not just like to do things, but if we're going to do something, we're just ready to do it. Okay? And so the bottom line here is that we need each other, whether we're north, west, east, or south. And when I was serving as a principal, I had to work on some of these things, because everybody brings something to the table. They may bring it different, but they bring it to the table. So for me to learn why people are the way they are, or why they have these characteristics, it makes for things to happen in a good way. So everybody brings something positive to the table. So again, Paul left us with some instructions on how to live in harmony with each other. I'm leaving you some instructions in reference to dealing with people's personal styles when you gather with them. It could be in your home, it could be on your job, it could be in the church house, but we all bring something to the table. And this, I thought of this. Most of you know Michelle Parker Davis. And she is about one of the most bubbliest persons I ever met in my life. And so she would often say, you know, people don't understand me. They don't understand how I am. You know, I'm just, you know, I'm lively, and she is. But what I've learned about her, she's a lively worker. You know, she gets the job done. You give her a task, she gets it done. So I say that to say we've got to learn each other.
Yeah.
Because I've needed her to get something done. And she comes in her own way. All right, so God bless you. I hope that you've learned something today from what I've shared, but most of all that you've learned something today from what God has given me to share with you by the way of Paul. God bless you.